There are a few things that make you stand out from the crowd when it comes to your brand. Obviously, there is your design, but there is also your brand voice. But what is your brand voice? Maybe you've heard it talked about before and you're like, Holly, what the hell does that even mean? Can you tell me about what brand voice is and how the heck I can find mine and use it in my business? And the answer is yes. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to Brand Your Passion, the show that helps you turn the thing you love the most into something that people know and love you for. I'm your host, Holly Arnett, the brand coach for creatives, and I'm on a mission to make the world a more creative place, one brand at a time. If you're ready to get more eyes on your work, more dollars in your pocket, and more creativity in your life, you're in the right place. Welcome. Let's brand your passion. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to read a review from Lauren B19, who said that Holly's podcasts are so helpful. As a creative, I always get tips and ideas I can put into action right away. I love that, Lauren. Thank you so much for leaving that review, and I hope all of you listening agree as well. And if you want to maybe hear your review read out loud and me give you a shout out and a big old thank you, then make sure to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and yeah, I will read it next time. Thank you again, Lauren. You are the best. Okay. In today's episode, let's talk about brand voice and what creatives need to know about finding and using your unique brand voice. So basically, to clear things up from the beginning, your brand voice is essentially your distinct personality. It's the unique way that you present yourself that makes you different from anybody else. It should set you apart from everyone else and help your audience recognize you in a crowd. And that's why it's super important, because it does help you stand out, influence people's perception of you, increase their recognition, build trust, and create community. So it's all about making sure that people know who you are, they spot you, they recognize you, and they can say like, oh, I knew that was Holly because it just felt like Holly. It sounded like Holly. And I love Holly, and so I'm going to consume that content, or I'm going to enjoy that thing. So it's a really, really important part of your brand strategy, and then influences so many other things like your copywriting, your social media content, your visuals, your press releases, ad campaigns, emails. All of the things are influenced by your brand voice. So that's why it's important. There is a distinction to make, and hopefully this will kind of explain your brand voice a little bit more too, between voice and tone. Everybody has a unique voice that's different to everyone else's, but it stays consistent. If you hear me talking across a room, you can probably tell that it's me, and I always sound like me unless I put a filter on my voice or something like that, but it always sounds like me, and I sound different from somebody else, right? So while I have a consistent voice, my tone is influenced by emotion and inflection, and you might use different tones in different situations. So while I always sound like Holly, I can sound more serious and formal and professional, or I can sound more friendly and casual and chill. I can sound really excited and hyperactive and whatever if I'm launching something. There are so many different situations where your tone might change, but it will still sound like you. Hopefully that kind of explains things. You can think about, in terms of your tone on social media, you might sound one way. With your friends or family, you might sound a certain way. If you're dealing with a customer service situation, you might sound a certain way. So your tone will change depending on those situations. An example that might also help clarify this is from Sprout Media. They say that when Sprout talks to media, we may take a more authoritative tone, more confident, definitive statements, fewer questions, fewer apologies. We want to come off as an expert or leader in our field. No unnecessarily big words here, but calm, clear, and concise. But then when Sprout posts on social, we can unbutton a few buttons. Here we can be a bit more playful, use emojis, use some exclamation points, and be a bit more empathetic and compassionate. We remain confident, but we feel free to keep it casual. That's a great example of how Sprout social is going to have its own personality, but when they're talking to media, they have to be very professional and sound like an expert who's very formal and appealing to being published in media. But then when they're posting on social, it can be a little bit more cash. They can include emojis, like all of that stuff. That's how brand voice and tone works. So how are we going to do this? How do you uncover and use your unique brand voice? Well, first things first, you need to do as I always say in most of these episodes relating to brand strategy, is you need to start off with your vision and your mission and your values, because your brand voice is influenced by all of those things. So if your vision, like mine, is to make the world a more creative place, one brand at a time, my mission is to help creatives build their brand so that they can share their work, grow their audience, and own their moxie. And then my values, I have a range of different values about creativity, providing value, cheering creatives on, all of that stuff will then inform the way that my brand voice manifests, because I want to have a brand voice that appeals to creatives and talks about making the world a more creative place and feels creative and is based on cheerleading and supporting people and feeling really encouraging and inspiring and all of those things. So that's why you need to really make sure you know your vision and your mission and your values before you start doing your brand voice. You also, I alluded to this just before, but you need to keep your ideal audience in mind. So think about who you are talking to. Who are you trying to stand out for? Who are you trying to attract? Who are you trying to get in front of? Who do you want to listen and pay attention and remember who you are? And what do they want, or what do they need? If they are super casual and then you show up really professionally and formally, it might not appeal to them, right? If you blend in with all the other people that they're following, then they might not spot you. So you have to think about your ideal audience and make sure you have pinpointed those people and you understand them through and through. Step number 3 is to look back at your existing brand voice. If you have already started your business, or you've been creating or making things on the internet or wherever over time, then chances are you already have an existing brand and therefore an existing brand voice. So take a look back and ask yourself, what has performed really well? What have people engaged in? What have people reacted to? What have people said they loved? Have people said, you're reading my mind? How did you know that I felt like that? Or anything like that. What has performed really well? What feels the most like you? If you go back and read stuff or look at stuff and you're like, oh, it doesn't really feel like me. I don't know why I posted that. Or I wrote this proposal and I thought it had to be really professional, but it just feels forced and I don't like it. Have a look at what feels the most like you and gather that stuff together. And then gather what I call you-isms. So I will have Holly-isms. If you're Jess, you'll have Jess-isms. If you're Pepper, you'll have Pepper-isms. You will have you-isms. These are words or phrases that you use over and over and over again that automatically make things sound like you. I always say things like, your gal did this, or heck yeah, or I don't know, I giggle a lot. So these are things that sound like me and feel like me, and when I use them I feel like, oh yeah, this feels like it's me, feels authentic and feels easy, just feels like me. So those are really great things to gather together. Then you can decide, what do you want to keep? What do you want to change out of those things that you've gathered? And what do those things feel like? What are the commonalities in those things, in the things that performed well, in the things that feel like you, and in the words and phrases that you use? What is it about them that works? What is it about them that feels like you? Is it that they're super casual? Is it that they are pretty witty? Are they really upfront and kind of no BS? What is it about them that makes them you and makes them unique and makes you want to keep doing that. Step number 4 is that you can find inspiration. Take a look at other brands, other businesses, other creatives that you like, and see what can inspire you in terms of their personality. What does it feel like? What does it look like? What is the energy that you get from it? How would you describe it? Come up with some inspiration of what you would like to sound like or what you would like to feel like. Not to copy, because that's not what we do around here, but just to be inspired by and say like, okay, I'm aiming for something like this, or this is a direction I want to go in. Next, you can then identify keywords that are going to determine what you do and don't want your brand personality to feel like. I have a list of brand keywords to choose from, but basically you want to just pick 5 words that explain what you do want your brand to feel like and what you don't. And the don't is really important because it's a really good guideline for as you're creating things and as you are outlining this brand voice to make sure you're not accidentally leaning towards those things. Say like you don't want to be formal, or you don't want to be really direct, or you don't want to come across aggressive or anything like that, but you do want to be authoritative. You can check your work and what you're creating against that and say, okay, it's feeling a little aggressive. How can I change that? Or how can I just pivot that a little bit so that it doesn't feel aggressive? It just feels like I'm an expert. So that's why it's important to have your key words. Next, you can choose a brand archetype that aligns with your brand's personality. And I've done a whole other episode on brand archetypes, so I will link to that. But a brand archetype is essentially, there are 12 common characters that every brand usually fits into, 1 or 2 of them. They are based on common characters that we encounter in books and movies and TV shows and any kind of story that group people into these general characteristics. For example, there's the hero or the sage, which is a really wise person. Think Gandalf or Dumbledore or Yoda. These are characters that you understand and have very clear personality traits and goals and kind of ways that they show up in the world. And so it's a really useful tool. Maker and Moxie is the creative magician or magical creative, whatever you want to say, whatever way you want to say it, which basically is a combination of the magician and the creative. When I am writing or creating things or working on my brand voice, I can have the creative magician in my head and go, okay, I want to make sure that what I'm writing feels magical and creative and is giving off or evoking those feelings of magic and transformation and wonder and awe, and also creation and making and bringing something to life and being really empowered by those things. So it's a really useful tool for you to use to really narrow down what your brand personality and your brand voice is, and then also create a brand that's really easy for your audience to understand, because everybody understands and relates to and gets these brand archetypes. So if you create a brand that is really very clearly a certain archetype, I'm not saying that someone is going to say Maker and Moxie is the magical creative, but they are going to get that feeling. They're going to understand what I'm all about, and they're going to say that's for me or that's not for me. And that's what we want for you too, is for you to be able to stand out and people say, oh my god, it's so clear what they're about, I love it, I understand it, and I want more of it. It's also a really just useful tool to be able to name your personality. So whether you do name it an archetype, or you can also name it another typical character. For example, maybe you are the bad influence best friend or the comforting auntie, or the very zen grandma. I don't know. You can name it whatever you want to name it, but it can be useful to name your personality or your brand voice. Step number 7 is to also describe how that person would act at a party. So whether you decide to go with the archetype or you then also want to name it the Zen grandma or whatever I said, then you can describe like, okay, if the Zen ma, let's call it the Zen ma, if the Zen ma walked into a party, what would they do? How would they act? Who would they talk to? What would they drink? How long would they stay? Who would they want to hang out with? What food would they eat? What would their favorite part of the party be? What would they be wearing? This is really useful to, again, personify your brand voice and make it really clear how you would act and how you will act. This can translate because you can say on social media, I'm going to treat social media like this party, and I'm going to show up on social media as the Zen ma. And that means I'm going to write about this kind of stuff, and it's going to feel this way, and I'm going to be dressed, aka designed, this kind of way. It really translates well to actually what you are making in your business and in your brand. So once you've done that, step 8 is to outline all of those details, narrow everything down, get rid of stuff that doesn't make sense or that doesn't feel aligned with what you're trying to do, and then fill in information that's missing so that you have a really robust description of your brand voice and your brand personality. And then pull it all together so that you have a page that explains your keywords, a description of your brand voice, some do's and don'ts of your brand voice, like I do sound like this, I don't sound like this, and some examples either from inspiration that you found or from the exercise that you've done about your brand archetype or how your person would act at a party. Some other things that you can outline or that you will want to pull together, you'll have description, like I said, of your overall brand voice, your brand archetype. You're going to characterize your brand, i.e. the bad influence best friend, comforting mother, the encouraging school teacher, the Zen grandma, whatever. You'll have your you-isms. You can also include a no-go list. This is what I like to call it, is a list of words and phrases that you won't use. Either they are industry terms that you don't agree with, so you don't want to call it this certain thing, or you don't want to talk about this certain thing, or whatever, or they are terms that are not inclusive or diverse or welcoming to certain people. There are a lot of terms that are ableist and racist and a whole bunch of bad things, so you can include those if you want to create a no-go list of words and phrases that your brand doesn't use. Opposite to that, you can create a word bank. This is something that I do with all my clients and they find it so useful, is to create a word bank, a bank of words that are in your brand voice, that are words that your brand would use, that are related to your overall brand vibe, your theme, your core concept for your brand. For me, obviously, my brand is all about moxie and branding and all of those things. So I have a word bank that includes a range of words that are all about having moxie and being a creative or a maker. And it's a word bank that you can refer back to if you get stuck or you want to make things feel more on brand, or you just need a little help in your writing or in whatever you are creating. Then you will have some more practical voice guidelines in terms of writing. So whether your writing is formal or informal, do you use contractions like isn't and can't and won't, or do you say I cannot, I will not? What language do you speak or write in? Do you use US or UK English? Do you use colloquialisms or slang? In terms of grammar, do you use Oxford commas? When you say and, do you write the full word? Do you use ampersands? Do you use pluses? When you write numbers, do you write the full word or do you use the numerical glyphs? These are all really practical writing guidelines that can be helpful for you to remember and to make sure you keep things consistent. But then also if you then hire a copywriter or a social media manager or someone to do your PR or an assistant who answers your emails, they have that information that will make sure it always sounds like you. So when you have done that, step 2 is to implement and start using your brand voice. You can always refer back to your brand strategy, which will include this brand voice information. You can check in to see if what you're writing or creating aligns with this brand voice strategy. You can use your you-isms and your word bank when you are stuck. You can use your brand personality and your brand voice to inform your visuals when you are creating your brand identity and any applications onto packaging or your website or anything like that. And then you can come back and refresh your brand voice whenever it's needed. Every so often, regularly, you should be checking in with your brand strategy, and that includes checking in with your brand voice to make sure it still feels aligned, you're still on board with this strategy, and it feels like the right brand voice for you. That has been 10 steps to finding and using your unique brand voice. Hopefully it's clarified and given you an insight into what your brand voice is, and then told you exactly how to try and find your own. If you would love to work on this with a group of other creatives, you can do so via the Next Level Creative, which is the branding lab for artists and makers who are ready to take their creative business to the next level. You will come in and you can watch the training all about your brand voice, get all the resources and the workbooks and tools and everything to figure out your brand voice, and then share that with me to get my expertise and advice and feedback. Share it with the community so that other creatives can give you feedback, or you can celebrate that you found your brand voice finally, and we can all cheer you on and celebrate you. So if you want to do that, head to thenextlevelcreative.com. But otherwise, hope this has been useful as always, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Brand Your Passion and choosing to spend time with me learning all about branding, business, and all things creativity. You can find more episodes just like this one at makerandmoxie.com/podcast. If you like this one, you can tap that subscribe or follow button so that you're notified about each and every new episode. And if you've got a spare second, please leave a review on iTunes or wherever it is that you're listening to this podcast, because I would absolutely 100% love to hear from you. If there were some helpful goodies in this episode for you, it would mean the world to me as well if you could screenshot that podcast player right now, hop on over to Instagram or Twitter and tag us at Maker and Moxie. By subscribing, reviewing, and sharing, you're helping reach more creators just like you, so that together we can make the world a more creative place, one brand at a time. We can't achieve this mission without you, so your support means the absolute world. I will talk to you in the next episode, but until then, keep creating.